Hey, this is Dr. Kevin, and once again, we got the Supernatural Junkies back together to talk about chemtrails. And this is one of those conspiracy theories that virtually everybody says is a hoax. The problem is, this is Dr. Dennis's favorite jam. So after years, we decided to take a look at this. It's surprising what we came up with. And let me ask you the question. If it looks like grass, tastes like grass, and smells like grass, what do you think it is?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Supernatural Junkies. I'm Super Alex. I'm here with Dr. Kevin. He's
This guy's mouthful because she literally started right in the middle of me like eating.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have a very important G sauce. Have you guys heard of G sauce? Jee sauce. But it's a Christian company, but it's really funny. Their tagline is "Y'all need G sauce."
Yep.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's made with almonds, by the way.
We're going to partner them with they're not sponsored. The Biblique sauce. Dr. Doja's still formulating. That we've been able to sample a little bit, but we can't wait for the real thing.
We want more.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Who else is here with us? We didn't even tell.
Dr. Dennis, Dr. Dozier.
Dr. Dennis, Dr. O.
The triple doc.
Dr. D.
And
morning.
And sans la hair. None of us have hair.
And mine is way shorter. Yes,
I don't know. She's
kind of
been hanging out with us.
I know it's falling out.
It's not as short as ours.
It's true.
Well,
give it time. Maybe a few more weeks. I'll come in with a bulb cap next week. Surprise! So.
Well, I mean, the thing we saw the other day is that now, first of all, you couldn't pray in silently in Britain, right?
Well, the caveat being within so many feet, if you lived or were standing within so many feet of an abortion clinic.
And then now they've gotten rid of Easter. I mean, if you don't believe where these people are headed, if that's somehow a conspiracy, now you can see where this is headed. And that's certainly what they're looking for in our country.
Well, I just wonder, we'll go around because I want to see what the guys think about it. But I just think it's crazy that you have to worry about being offensive to everyone but the Christian, right?
Yep. You need to respect everybody, but the Christian.
Yeah, except the Christian, right? They're the problem ones. And I just wonder how their entire country, right? Just like America is mostly white, right? Their country is mostly Christian. Right. So how did they do that?
Which country? UK?
Well, yeah.
UK, they certainly, they used to be.
I know. Well, it's right. Exactly.
That's their heritage.
Right. But now what? What do you guys think of that? That Easter's, how far we falling?
I don't have a problem getting rid of the Ishtar holiday.
Right.
I think we should rename it Resurrection Sunday. But I think it's an opportunity to just keep on witnessing the gospel. It doesn't matter if you have a holiday or not, right?
Right.
It does, but you can see this is clearly
targeted.
Incursion. I mean, look what's behind it.
Yeah, right? It's targeted. It's not necessarily to do with that. It's targeted at Christians. That's the intention.
Right. Well, don't they have to get rid of Christianity in order to bring in the one world religion?
Well, they're going to incorporate Christianity. Of course, where they're going to call the real Christians will join with everybody because they're going to have their version of Jesus most likely. But, that's the sad part. So, Dr. Dozier, what do you think about praying silently or getting rid of Easter? Is that those good ideas, being arrested for stuff like that?
When I hear those things, I see the world doing what they're supposed to do. And all you have to do is go to John 15 when Jesus saw the different relationships, the relationship with apostles of them, with one another, disciples of one another, and then their relationship with the world. And he told them, the world hated me, therefore they will hate you.
Yep.
Sir, greater than his master. And so what you start to see an all-out hatred of God.
Mm-hmm.
We look at Isaiah 5:20, light for darkness, darkness for light, evil for good, good for evil. We're seeing all of this today. And so you come up with these different things. For example, in the United Kingdom, the censoring of online speech, where you can even criminalize. That's very dangerous. There was one thing I was seeing, and I don't know how true it is, but I'll have to research that further. But even if you were to come to England and you were online and you had what they consider hate speech, and your online speaking was in the United States, that they could arrest you.
Yep.
United. How true that is, I don't know. I'm not quick to repeat things that they say until I really researched it and come up with some absolutes. But it's no doubt that that is where we are. And when you look at the hatred for Israel, this is about God. There's been pretty much no peace in that area since the Israelites were there in ancient BC. And it's not just them, but the Christian will be next. And I say next in a full force way, because it's all about the Lord. It's about what you stand for. Think about I often tell people this: criminals don't like law enforcement. Criminals hate law. They don't like law enforcement because they know they're on the other side. And literally, to a law enforcement officer is like evil to them.
Yep.
They hate them because they know that these individuals have the power to arrest them and all. Now, you take that today, and you even look at some of the people in high positions. This is to say, and I'm not going to make any apologies because I'm going to say it just like this. I know the majority of law enforcement officers are not wicked. They are not evil. If you did not have them, then you would have lawlessness.
That's right.
But you take this, when you see things like defunding the police and criminalizing police, what you're seeing is that hatred of those who keep things restrained. You're seeing tremendous hatred. When you look at, for example, the apostate preachers, and there are a lot of apostate preachers out there right now. I don't have to get into what they're preaching. We know it's apostasy because it goes against the word of God. The world loves them. But even those apostate preachers, they despise the people who minister the true word of the Lord. Because once again, you're teaching and preaching that which is lawful in the eyes of God, pleasing in the eyes of God, and it goes totally against the desires of the flesh. I mean, that's basically where we have gotten until you see flesh has gotten so out of control until Satan has just having his way with it. And anything that's good, Satan hates. And if he's able to influence the minds of others, he is the God of this world, the prince of the power of the air, then they will hate it as well.
Well, we're going to jump right in here today, and we're going to be talking about chemtrails. And of course, this has been Dr. Dennis's topic he's wanted to cover for quite some time. And so we thought we would usher him in a little bit today, of course. But Alex wants to read the verse for today for Dr. Dennis.
I will read Isaiah 13:10. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light.
Wow. So it tells you that there's going to be signs in the heavens and the earth and the sky. So we do see some things happening around the earth, but the problem is the climate control and the climate agenda is really kind of a farce. So it's something we would have to get into. But really, there's been this conspiracy going on, and they say it's for decades. I mean, maybe even 100 years, about this idea of spraying things in the atmosphere. Okay. Now, we're going to break this apart today, and I think you'll see it's going to open your eyes about a lot of things, because it's amazing how you can literally see people saying one thing and in the next article admitting something else. But let's start this off with just what came out of RFK's mouth. So here's this coming out of HuffPost, okay? A newly minted Trump surrogate, also known as RFK, because he's just been a surrogate his whole life, just waiting for somebody else to latch onto, promises to stop chemtrail crime. And of course, what they cover there, of course, is that this is something that's been debunked a long time ago. And listen to what they parallel the kind of debunking here. But scientific truth hasn't stopped Kennedy from spreading the lie, just like it hasn't stopped him from lying about vaccines for years. Okay. The same social media account that Kennedy responded to Monday was also predictably sharing anti-vaccine content, anti-5G cell tower hysteria, and the rumor that singer Adele, and of course now we know many other, music, aficionados or really megastars are using different symbolism that's clearly satanic or New World Order. Now, folks, there's the vaccine. If you're not aware, we were dead last in the world, number one at the end of the whole thing. And so If you wanted to do something good, you would do the opposite of what we did here. And yet here they are trying to parallel this. So this is the media saying, again, socially, intellectually, okay, morally, they are completely superior to you. So let's listen to this kind of show talk a little bit about RFK, and you can see what he ends up saying.
So how has this gone from conspiracy theory to actual US legislation?
Well, just recently, RFK Jr. appeared in an interview on the US television show Dr. Phil, and he said he'd do everything in his power to stop the emissions, and he appeared to blame chemtrails, the existence of them, on another government agency. When he was asked about chemicals being sprayed in the sky and what he'd do about it, he took the question seriously. Let's take a very quick listen to what he said.
That is not happening in my agency. You know, we don't do that. It's done, we think, by DARPA. And a lot of it now is coming out of the jet fuel.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, those materials are put in jet fuel. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it. We're bringing on somebody who's going to think.
Now, when he says we think it's done by DARPA, what he's referring to is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is a part of the US Department of Defense. Now, this isn't the first time he's publicly endorsed this. He has previously replied to chemtrails fanatics on X, saying we are going to stop this crime. But more recently, just a month ago, he replied to this person, this believer in the theory, who was pushing for bills in the US to ban atmospheric geoengineering. And what that is, it is a new field of science where scientists are trying to find ways to fight the consequences of fossil fuel pollution that we as humans are creating. Now, Kennedy essentially said that 24 states are moving to ban geoengineering, and that the Health and Human Services is going to do its part.
I smell a steamy pile of poo. Whenever she's talking, she might as well just poo coming out of her mouth. First of all, the fact that whole... It's frustrating. It's so frustrating when you the blatant lies. And I don't know how someone with integrity can get up in front of an audience and do that, to lie like that. She's got to know she's lying. Either that or she's a complete freaking moron.
Yep.
Sorry. All right.
Well, you're assuming she has integrity.
Yeah.
Right. You must not. In order to go out and say those things. Oh, guys, I mean, there's no proof they've ever done that before. They've been so honest. Believe the science. Remember, it's safe and effective. Right. You guys have already, shot the wad there. We know you're liars.
Yeah. There's really nowhere to go on that.
I just can't.
How do you really feel?
Yeah, I know. I hold it in all the time.
Well, what I think, you're correct, but did you see how she tried to defend it?
Yeah, the spin.
She's like, well, it's being done because of all the fossil fuels that the humans are.
Who's trying to cover up fossil fuels? That's really fucking help us. That's what the vaccine was for. Safe and effective, guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you think through this, do you really believe that the people that are doing the show you're watching are smarter than RFK? Do you really believe that? Do you really believe he would talk about something that doesn't have, actually any basis behind it? And that's really the next question that we have to ask ourselves is this true or not? But, the fact that he would talk about it alone says we should be able to put this on the table.
By the way, his voice, the reason his voice is the way that it is, vaccine injury.
Yeah. Wow. So let's go ahead and look at some of the facts involved here. So the first thing we have to understand is you can't say that, there's no such thing as chemtrails. The theory really is that, these are not chemtrails. They're actually condensation trails or contrails. And of course, the problem is we've got 8 states currently that are actually now pursuing legislation to stop this. Now, think about the implications of that. We have a complete cover up with the media. They're all saying the same thing. This is ridiculous. Even Rogan says there's nothing here to look at. Okay. But here's the real reality is that we look at all these contrails, okay, and exhaust and et cetera, and some of these things don't actually add up, as we're going to be able to show you. Now, notice the people who put this out are MSNBC, again, saying that there's nothing to this. But let me show you this other article that they also wrote and talk about what they're actually doing. So what you saw in that last, article was a complete denial, even though all these states are actually moving forward with this type of legislation to block something that doesn't actually exist. Now you can see the contradiction here. But here's the other article here, again from MSN, I believe, that's talking about something else that sure looks and sounds like chemtrails. So here's the actual article, and it's called Geoengineering, the controversial plan to hack the planet's climate. Okay. And again, what they are doing here is exposing the reality that there is actually our ability to go up and spray things in the atmosphere, chemicals, if you will. And this is being done for geoengineering. So here they are completely denying, okay, that there's anything going on with chemtrails. This is just condensation. And in the same breath, they're then turning around and also talking about how we are spraying things in the atmosphere and how we're going to be controlling our climate. And what's the narrative there? The narrative is that we have global warming. And because there's global warming, this is why we're going out. And at least they do one thing that's honest there. They're admitting that it's actually controversial. So in looking at this, Dennis kind of, again, this is where his jam is going to take over. And then you can see how this is all going to fit together here.
So this is from Agenda 21, which talks about sustainability and how, if you read through this document, it's way too long to post in this podcast, but through Agenda 21, they talk about controlling the climate and to protect the earth from global warming. But the irony here is that they're not going to protect the earth from global warming. They actually are going to create global warming, because when you spray these chemicals into the stratosphere, it causes a blanket effect. It reflects the sun, but it traps in the heat underneath. So it actually can warm the earth. And it's worse than that. See, we'll go through these slides we have. This is, I brought up this because Operation Popeye was a seed. They seeded the clouds over Vietnam in order to create monsoons to have a military advantage. Now, maybe we could get the video there is a video of LBJ back in the 60s saying those that control the weather control the world. And the government has been planning for decades, if not a century, how to control the weather in order to have it as a weapon, a military weapon. And that's exactly what they did with Operation Popeye, like cloud seeding the area and creating these monsoons. And what the problem was that it prevented the opposition from moving their equipment into the area to prepare for battle.
Well, remember, this is just another conspiracy theory. And then they turn around and admit that, first of all, they do spray crops, right? They do cloud seeding, okay? They are trying to control the weather. This is a military operation to do that. Well, we know that they're spraying things in the clouds. Do you think they're chemicals? You see, and then we got the global warming agenda, which now gives them what? What's the Hegelian dialectic say? It says whatever you want to do, create a problem where the natural solution is what you wanted to do to begin with, right? So if they're spraying something in the air, do you think they're going to tell us what it is? Did they tell us what was in these vaccines? See, you can see where this is about dosing. The reason this is the perfect follow-up to we talked about why we've been dosed, and that's an important correlation for you to see. Now we got the last part is the geoengineering. Again, they're spraying these chemicals, but they're not going to call them chemtrails, even though they're chemicals being sprayed by these types of planes.
Yeah, there's the proof right there that this was back in 2018 when Harvard came out and said that they are doing this kind of atmospheric hacking. I'm going to go up one paragraph. If humans are able to spray millions of tons of sulfate aerosol into the sky, we could create a sort of chemical canopy, just like I was saying about the last slide about global warming. that reflects the heat from the sun and takes the edge off of global warming. But unfortunately, that canopy also holds the heat in on the earth. Now, if you look at it, just simply think about when you have a cloud cover, a natural cloud cover over an area in the evening that keeps the heat under those clouds. And in the next morning, when you wake up, it's going to be warmer that day if that cloud cover there, or you may even feel more humid, especially down here in Florida. But one thing that you got to think about when you have that cloud cover versus when you don't have cloud cover, because when we have clear skies, then we're able to, the earthly temperature is able to cool down because it's able to go up into the atmosphere. Now, if you look at the next paragraph in this article, is that they say through this Harvard study, this kind of atmospheric or atmosphere hacking could be dangerous, but as catastrophic as climate change increases its grip on the planet, researchers at Harvard at the beginning to take the idea that solar geoengineering is more serious. And as you'll see as we go through some of the videos in this podcast, there's more than just spraying the skies to put a protective layer in the skies. They actually are able to use frequencies to move these particles around and control the weather.
One thing about this Agenda 2021, we have to remember that this is a United Nations plan, United Nations Agenda 2021, just as they have 2030. And I'm saying that for this reason. As far as man is concerned, technologically and scientifically, he's smarter per se in being able to do such things. But this is something that we saw from the beginning when you go to Genesis chapter 11, when you have the building of the Tower of Babel, of confusion, and there was something God said. He said, the people are one. And at that time, they all spoke one language, okay? And he spoke of what they commenced to do, what they began to do, to build this tower, to make a name for themselves. But then he said something. He said, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Nothing will be restrained from them, which they have devised a plan or a purpose to do. And what I see here is man who does not believe in God constantly tries to be as or even greater than the God which they may profess to not believe in, or see him as a God who just made his creation and left it to deal with itself. So it's not surprising that you see a lot of things, because God did give man dominion over the earth to subdue it. The thing is, a lot of things became perverted and evil and wicked. When people could have used their mind for good, they began to use their mind for evil things. Just as you look at this Agenda 2021 plan, which they've already had their meeting, but this thing was, not only was it for climate, and that's what we're talking about, I don't want to take us down a rabbit trail, but it really was to bring all of humanity under one. It was to bring all of humanity under one, all of humanity under this setup plan by the United Nations. I mean, even when it came to your property ownership, your family homes, things we see happening to farmers and all. And I mean, how do you blame farmers for climate change? They were talking about the cows, the bulls, when they released their feces. They were saying a few years ago, they were saying how that in itself damages the climate. It's just sickening when you see the different things that these people profess themselves to be wise, the things that they are doing. So you can see it, Bob. You can see this thing affecting all areas, even travel. Because if you take climate change, then you start going at emissions. You go at emissions, then you start pushing electrical vehicles. Some people like electrical vehicles. That's great. I don't see a problem with it. The problem I see is when you force people to get electrical vehicles, many cannot afford them. Okay, and some people may prefer gas vehicles. The things you're doing to the farmers, the things you're doing to the environment. It's like all of these things they have a plan in mind, a purpose in mind. And it's not for your betterment, but all of it is for their control. I think we mentioned earlier Fauci. I refer to some of these guys as like being Dr. Frankenstein, and they're creating a whole bunch of monsters
That's right.
because they get all of our tax dollars and all of our monies, and they go and they do something with our money. They're the latest whim they have. They go and they experiment. They experiment on different things. And I believe all of these things will eventually lead to, they're already doing, we see it. They lead to disaster.
Yep.
They lead to disaster because this is man trying to be greater than God. He's doing things that in truth God is not well pleased with. And so that is what I see with it. I see the imagination of man. I see what God has created man. He's given man a great deal of intelligence. All we have to do is look at all these other animals and all the other species on the earth. Some of them may be more powerful than us as far as brute strength is concerned, but none of them can control us.
That's right.
But yet we still can control every creature we can control it, we can eliminate it, and we can do whatever. We can put it in zoos to get people to look at it and take away their freedom and all of that. And even though we think it's all beautiful and all, I'm sure those animals will probably love to have been in a while. So there's a lot of things that man does. And I say what it is it's a misuse of his talent and his abilities.
Yep.
And I don't really see great things coming from all of this or good things coming from all of this climate control. And usually people have to lie when they see things don't work well. They'll never acknowledge that they made a mistake. They'll never acknowledge that it's wrong. So that's my comments on that.
Well, I think this is tied to climate control, and that's a can of worms we've never opened up. The bottom line is we can say that the Earth is warming since the Ice Age, but that's about all we can really say if you really do your research. So, this is the situation. But Dr. Dennis, let's go to this next clip here. So this is a movie Dr. Dennis sent me. It was called The Dimming. And at first I took this personally because I thought, it's true, I am getting a little older. So then I realized, I was, using everything is about me, which is a great principle. But so this is a little clip from this movie. It's called The Dimming. And they just bring up some great facts here. Right now, they're showing us actual blueprints and tactical blueprints for things that spray things out of all types of aircraft.
Perhaps the greatest lie ever perpetrated on populations all over the world is the condensation trail lie. What we're seeing in our skies is not condensation. It's sprayed particulate dispersions with very few exceptions.
They shouldn't be there. Jet engines burn clean. So if there's anything coming out of them, it's an additive.
They're absolutely not contrails. Contrails do not linger, dissipate, and go into cloud coverage, period, in a report.
Most are unfamiliar with the science term called global dimming. That term refers to the amount of direct sunlight that no longer reaches the surface of the planet due to light scattering particles that are building up in the atmosphere.
So I stopped that video there because that's what Dennis was tying into, that we actually are seeing some dimming, and that's because of the particles and things in the air. And so that means that more particles in the air could certainly be a negative. But there's several things that popped out to me on that video, and I guess I could let you guys go first.
First of all, we credit that to geoengineeringwatch.org. That's Dane Winnington's website. He is the lead person and lead researcher on geoengineering. He's got so much information on his website that's why I grabbed a lot of the information for today. And he actually tells people to please spread this information because we need people to understand what exactly is going on. If you watch that movie, and it is a 2-hour documentary, I've only gotten through about an hour and 20 minutes of it. And it's kind of depressing because if it's as bad as he said it is, he thinks this outside of a nuclear war, this is the worst thing that is our biggest threat to the climate. And he further goes on to give much research and much documentation on how they are engineering the climate. And it is about control, like Dr. Dozier just said about Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030, because they had their plan for 21 got disrupted when Trump won in 2016. I think we we probably would have seen this accelerate if Hillary had won, but Trump interrupted their plan. They were not planning for that. But what happened here, and where we are now, though, is that we need our government to step in and stop this, and we have to convince them, and we need to get many voices behind us.
Yeah, Dennis, if I could, I'd like to ask you a question from that. When you look at this, and we speak of the darkening and the dead, and they're doing the climate control, so-called, what do you see the results being if you're trying to control the climate and it gets too dim or it gets too dark? What are the results of the climate then?
Well, one direct result of dimming the climate is that you're going to affect the ecological level. Okay. Biology 101, photosynthesis, plants take in sunlight, they take in carbon dioxide, and they produce oxygen. If you interrupt that cycle right there, you're going to affect the food supply directly. You're going to go ahead
as well as the core temperature, making it even colder, perhaps.
Well, but they haven't really had it. They're not really affecting the core temperature. Remember what I said? They're placing a canopy there, saying it's reflecting the sunlight, but they're trapping the heat of the earth. So, don't forget, they're saying that we are, through our emissions and through the emissions of airplanes and everything else, is creating, damage to the environment. But those emissions do accumulate in the atmosphere, but they're trapping those emissions underneath these cloud covers. So they're not actually cooling the earth. They're actually warming the earth. And if you're in that documentary, he explains and he shows how the polar ice caps are melting and dropping and so forth, which they say is due to climate change, but it's actually the geoengineering and manipulation of the weather. It is so deep. The fact that they put these particulates in the air, they've tested these particulates. A lot of them is, aluminum, barium sulfate. There's the lead that has been found. There's lithium that has been found. All these things that are actually nanoparticles that they can control with frequencies. Now that's the conspiracy, but they prove it. They talk about HAARP, which is an electromagnetic area up in, I believe HAARP is up in Alaska, but they actually shoot these frequencies into the air to try to control the weather. And they show videos through the movement of these clouds and how they can also create high pressure systems to block out the clouds and create droughts. So this is, like I said, Lyndon B. Johnson said back in the 60s that he who controls the weather controls the world. And it's a pretty sick thing to think that they're actually doing this. I don't want to believe it. I mean, I think the natural human reaction, I think the reason why a lot of people don't want to believe it is because it's that cognitive dissonance. I don't want to believe they're doing this. But when you look up in the skies, and if you actually look up in the sky, and I see it every day, and you see these trails, these particular trails forming clouds, condensation trails, maybe you'll see them as if the plane's like at 40,000 feet where it's cold air, but you'll see them disappearing also in the same track. You'll see them, they disappear right away. These trails do not disappear. They form clouds. And what is it doing when it rains and those particulates come down on the crops? And they even talk about how they come down in the forest and how they're actually making these forest fires worse. And that they interview firefighters who actually talk about how these fires are burning at high rates.
There's a reason why I asked that question. And that reason is either they're ignorant to history or they're ignoring history. For about 550 years, from like the 1300s to around 1850, the world in Europe, North American population. It had what was referred to as the Little Ice Age. And he's familiar with that. It had a Little Ice Age. And you had regions where it was, they like to say, it was frozen over. And Dennis, you brought something out that happens from this, because what these cold temperatures did is cause longer and even more frequent winters. Frequent winters, that means winters beyond winter seasons. And they were longer. And what happened is it affected people socially, affected people economically, it affected crops. There were food shortages, there were famines. Of course, there's food shortage ended up being famines, as well as population decline because of the mortality rate. So what they're doing when they're trying to play these weather, and I just don't believe there's any sincerity with them. I believe it's like guys I believe they're like mad scientists who want to test. We want to always have weather changes. That, like the period I just gave you, was over 500 years, and it ended less than about 175 years from our day to day. But when people don't pay attention to history, they don't know that was something even in my day, which was a little bit after Dennis, this season. After my day, they were taught in high school. You had to go on your own to get really, really deep on this thing, but that's something that they have to know, and you want to ignore, and as Dennis used, there's cognitive dissonance. You may believe that that's true, but your behavior says something else. Yep. And so you get it to less informed people to believe all of this stuff, and it really is doing them more damage than good. And that's why I was asking the question about that, so that I could just go to that point. And I believe if people were more aware of things that have transpired, they'd ask questions, say, so how are you going to change the course that God has set? When I was looking at, I believe it's Genesis 8, I believe it's verse 22, after the flood, when he told Noah, as long as the earth remains, there'll be summer and heat. Okay, there'll be night and day. Winter, there'll be cold and heat. There'll be cold and heat, night and day. He said, as long as the earth remains. God's word settles that. So when man says this and that, and it's going to boil over, it's going to freeze over, and we're going to destroy it. No, man's a lie. There will be global burning, not global warming, but global burning. And you can find that in 2 Peter chapter 3, when he melts that. So there'll be global burning. You need to be concerned about real things. Okay, let me back on down there. But I just wanted to comment on that, because
I can't agree more. You brought it up before when you talk about the pride of man and building a Tower of Babel. I think the pride of man, they to think that they can play God and control the weather, and they are. I mean, when I saw that movie, Doc, it's disgusting. It's what they're doing, and people, the question I get asked, I talk to people, I talk to family members, they're like, come on, I said, listen, how can you deny that? Look at the sky. I'll be playing golf with a friend, and he's like, like calls me Captain Contrary. Oh, come on, I'm like, how can you say that's a normal cloud? It's right there. We haven't, it's almost like there are no drones here. I mean, these are not the droids you're looking for. And the way I can explain it is that it's cognitive dissonance. They don't want to know. I think the same thing was with the vaccine, as we talked about many times before. And then the other question that comes is like, well, why would they be spraying themselves? And my sister-in-law's answer to that, because she's a believer that this is happening. She goes, because they're not human.
Yep.
And yet they're demonic.
Well,
demonic.
So let's keep going, guys. You got Dr. Dozier and Dennis fired up now. We got to
Yeah, you got some good videos and so there, Doc.
Watch this next video, guys.
We're told this is all, quote, condensation that we see in our skies. We have aircraft leaving trails at altitudes far too low with far too low humidity to possibly produce any trail under any circumstances, and yet we see horizon to horizon trails, silvery white skies, everything we know we would get with geoengineering, we have. You can't turn a condensation trail on and off. We see these trails down 20,000 feet, sub 20,000 feet. The conditions necessary for a naturally occurring vapor trail cannot happen at those altitudes. We have film footage of these tankers spraying at altitude, military tankers, KC-10s, KC-135s, C-17 Globemasters. We have up-close photographs of retrofit nozzles mounted on aircraft spraying directly into the exhaust stream to make it look like condensation. And we have the patents for these processes. We have Senate documents, presidential documents, military documents, that these programs have been going on for about 70 years at a large scale.
So, you watch, and again, remember, these are the tip of the iceberg. The other one we talked about was over 2 hours. And so let me just say it this way. I'm going to play devil's advocate because you're going to say this is condensation. When's the last time you've seen condensation last that long? In your house, anywhere on your house, your windows, we get condensation. But they're going to say that's what this is. And they will go back and say, well, the climate isn't a whole lot different. Well, didn't you just agree then that the time climate is a lot different, then there's not a lot of global warming? So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to pick one of those arguments. And then the second thing I'll go, well, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, these things are all still running at a very similar speed, right? But we can't negate the facts. The facts are that they have been trying to use the weather as a weapon, right, is what Dennis was saying here. So when I think about anything, I always go like this. Well, first of all, if it looks like grass, tastes like grass, and smells like grass, I'm starting to think it's grass, right? So that's the first thing. Let's just start right there, okay? Chemtrail. What does it mean? A chemtrail, they're trying to say they don't exist. Well, what is a chemtrail? It's a trail of chemicals that are extending out past an airplane. Okay, so we know that there's been crop dusters for a long time, right? We know that they're cloud seeding. Okay, they've been doing that for a long time. We know that our own government was purposely trying to mess with the weather by spraying things. This is Vietnam. Do you think there's advancements since then? We know that they're admitting that there's geoengineering. So how can all of these things require chemicals to be sprayed behind aircraft? So how can you say there's no such thing as chemtrails and then admit that there's geoengineering or cloud seeding going on? See, so that right there is the first problem. And then you have the other facts. These are facts. RFK knows more about this than probably anybody else because he is at least admitting in our government. But we have states that can see this happening. They're trying to stop this. Okay, they're trying to outlaw it. How can you outlaw something that's not actually happening? And then you have what it looks like. There's no doubt that sometimes it looks like condensation, but it doesn't last. It doesn't go from sky to sky. It doesn't stop and start. Some of those pictures, there's no trail coming from the engine. It's coming from the entire aircraft. It doesn't even look like a condensation trail, right? And then we have to get into, the patents. Well, they got the patents on all these things to do this. The equipment is there. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of investment into the equipment to do all this kind of stuff. And then we have the history. Okay, if this is true, if it looks like grass, tastes like grass, smells like grass, we're starting to say this is happening. And then we go, well, who's the person who's saying that this isn't happening? What's their history? Well, can you believe this? Are you trying to tell me that the American people, okay, don't have a government that's willing to dose them? Okay, now go back to MK Ultra. Okay, go back to the American Syphilis Project that they did at Tuskegee. Okay, it doesn't take you very far. No, I'm sorry. Just look at the vaccine. See, the same people that are saying this were saying the same thing about the vaccine. Did they disclose what was in there? No, they didn't. You can see what I'm saying. And so you start to run this down that the very people group, why would we believe anything they say? If they were so right about COVID, again, they were dead last. We were dead last in the world. So these are the people that got us in dead last place. Why would we listen to them now? And we're going to show you some things about global warming as we go forward. We're going to show you that they're dosing our food. Why would it be unreasonable to think that they're dosing the sky, right? We have 2,000 chemicals they put in American food that they don't put anywhere else in the world. Okay, so when you get into this and immediately throw this baby out with the bathwater, how prevalent is it? Some of these guys are saying they can't prove that there's an increase of certain elements. You do see it, some people that are entertaining this, but to say there's no evidence, which is what they say, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's clearly something going on here, and that's why they're able to move these laws forward in different states. And I think that's what people are neglecting to see there. And so I think that's my rant on the whole thing. I don't see anywhere to go, but it's still an unknown. And frankly, it's scary, but they are trying to bring the world into their submission. They're creating the problem that gives them what they want, and that is control of the whole planet in one world. So anyways, who wants to take it after that, baby?
I love the rant and I love the proverbial soapbox, and I think you're absolutely correct. But you're being too logical, Kevin.
That's right.
You're too logical. What are you talking about? You saw the equipment, you saw the patents, you saw everything. I mean, he documents everything in that film. And I believe I sent you the law, the US 1520. Yes, these states are trying to ban these chemtrails. And I think Florida actually just passed it. Tennessee did pass it, but they're still going to spray because it's a federal program. This has to be stopped on the federal level.
And I would say it's definitely another sign of the times. And you speaking of those chemtrails, and I believe you brought up things that took place in Vietnam. It somewhat takes me back to the usage of Agent Orange. And you asked, well, how did they disperse it? Well, you had several ways that they dispersed it. You had the Air Force, they had a warfare program, herbicidal warfare program, and it was called Operation Ranch Hand. And this is where they would have these different planes that would fly out with these large tanks, and they would spray this chemical down there, and then you had the helicopters, not the UH-1Hs, but the UH-1Bs. They would use them, and they would fly a little lower, and the whole thing was and then you also had on the back of trucks, but the whole thing was to destroy the foliage so that the enemy could not hide. And so I'm sure when they look at it was easy to trace when they moved, when they were traveling, when the enemy was moving to different points. And so when I look at this, I think about they're going to look at, okay, we use this in the war. We were successful in dropping these chemicals. Now we take it and we do this. And so it goes from one thing to another to another. And as Dennis was saying, it's something that needs to be stopped because it's very, very dangerous. And I'll just go back, and I'm always going to go there, biblically, I'll go back. Whenever man thought that he could do something either outside of God or better than God, God did one or the other. If you were supposed to be his and you thought you could do it outside of him, it's like, okay, I'm going to leave you to this. And then when you see what this does to you, and you repent and you cry out to me with your whole heart, then I'll step in and do something. If it was someone who thought they were greater than God, i.e. Nebuchadnezzar, then God would eventually let him, he gave him he referred to him as his servant. But when he started mocking God and thinking he was better and this and that, the other, and that God was really nothing, the God of Israel was nothing, then God, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to humble you until you come to recognize who I am. And I believe, I know, because the word lets us know that every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess things in the earth, under the earth and above, that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God. And I believe that there's going to be such a humbling, and we need to pray, not that we don't see it in our time, but that if it happens in our time, that we do see it. Let me put it that way. We need to pray that if it happens in our time, we do see it. because I do believe eventually God is going to do something about this. And my belief is based on his word. Let me know that he will. But it would not hurt man in the meantime to show that I'm lined up with God on these issues. And I do believe you have some people in government who do it. It wouldn't hurt to say, okay, these things have to stop. These things have to stop, because we really hardly ever find any good coming from these things that take place like this. It goes from one stage to another, something that can start out with good intentions, it ends up turning. And that is because of the heart of man.
Yeah.
So that's how that'll be the last comments that I'll make in this particular podcast today.
Or the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yep. Well, also chemtrails. So a little more trash talking. So, Dr. Dennis, do you feel better about yourself now? Dr. Dennis has been on chemtrails for a long time, and so we are thankful, Dr. Dennis. He did all this research for us today, and then he got me going. So
I think we put out a lot of good information. I would like to point everybody who wants to find out more information about this to geoengineeringwatch.org. And I also would like to tell them to watch the documentary. It's on the website. It's for free. And please pray for our planet, and pray to the Lord of them, because I mean, if this is as bad as Dane says it is, we're going to see famines. We're going to see catastrophic effects from that. And we already have, people questioned about the hurricanes last year and how did all of a sudden it got moved off the coast and up into the Carolina mountains. And it was a hurricane over Texas that went like this, like did a figure eight. It's like, well, how's this happening? I mean, like I said to you, Kev, I feel like Will Ferrell in Zoolander. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I mean, you watch the stuff that's going on and you shake your head but you got to fold your hands and lift up your heart to God.
Yes.
Yeah, I think what we're all dealing with is that they have created their own religion. This is a religious movement that we're up against. And what's funny is that they have no trouble talking about conspiracy theories. In fact, it's everybody that's in conspiracy against them, right?
Yeah.
But, then it's fine. But when you talk about anything that somehow they don't have right, and once you understand that you're up against this religion that's completely irrational at this point, you can't talk to them. And that's what Jordan Peterson was saying, that, we're seeing a descending between 5 to 10% of our population is completely descended into histrionics, meaning there's no talking to them anymore. So we do recommend, again, it was called the Dimming the Planet, and the other one was called Hacking the Planet. And so those are both something you can watch on YouTube, and you'll be able to see that. So hope you guys do that and join us today. And thanks for joining us today. Alex had to leave, little phone call, and she's like, "Oh, I gotta go." But I'll find out about that later. And we had to delay the podcast twice today because of the same thing popping in our phones. So thanks for everybody coming. God bless you. And we just pray we're going to keep putting out the truth. So
Dr. Dozier, pray us out.
Father, we bless you. We thank you and we honor you today in the name of Jesus for your grace and mercy. And we can see what you said in the primitive state of man when he would attempt to do anything that will come to his imagination, and how many of these things grieved you. And we're seeing a lot of those things today. And Lord, there is a remnant in this earth that still believe that you are in control of everything, because we know you are in control of everything. So I just pray, Lord, that those who are hearing us today, Lord, will be encouraged. Those who may be saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? How are we going to make it through this? I pray, Lord God, that they'll be encouraged as they trust and rely upon you. And we do thank you today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Let's stand with Christ for the truth on everything, including chemtrails. So, God bless you.
Amen.